Hello, my name's Howard Stone. I'm the current president of the Whitworth Society, and I became a scholar in 2002. And I currently have two companies that I work for. One is called Ecolite and the other one is called Dow Finance.
How did you get into the scholarship? Can you take us through that journey?
Back in 1997, 98, I was at college and there was a poster on the wall that said, would you like to win £1,000? Would you like to win a Whitworth Scholarship, Whitworth Prize? So I applied for the Whitworth Prize. I was one of 3 people in the UK to get a Whitworth Prize. And then I spent the £1,000 actually going to evening classes to get my maths qualifications to then go to university. So at the end of the Whitworth Prize, I wrote a report on my year and what I'd spent the money on, and then that went into the Institution of Mechanical Engineers and the Whitworth Society, and they asked me then to apply for a Whitworth Scholarship. So I came along for my interview in September 99, and my first question the awards panel asked me was, what search engine do you use? And that was in 99, and I said, Google. And their response was, is it any good? And I said, yep, it's not bad. And that was my first question of my interview.
It's been a few years since then, and you know the society and the scholarship now from all angles. How would you say it's benefited your life, or what kind of impact has it had on your life?
There's been times when the network has been very valuable. So I worked in Albuquerque for a year and a half, and would you believe there's a scholar that lives in Albuquerque? And I actually met him in the Institution of Mechanical Engineers the year that I became an award holder, so that was 99, he became a scholar. So I met him, his name's Alan Ross, we spoke for 10-15 minutes, and then 6 years later I emailed him out the blue and said, I'm coming out to Albuquerque for an interview, are you free to meet me? So I went out there, Alan and his wife Kelly took me around Albuquerque, my family, wife and daughter moved out there with me, and then every Saturday we went out for breakfast on Old Route 66.
Incredible, and it also opened up some doors for you to do international work, didn't it?
Yes, so the Society has every year a President's Meeting, which is held in July, and typically during that time we go to a place of technology where the President currently works, and I went to a power station in Didcot, and from that knowledge I then managed to get a placement out in Dubai to work on a new city out there.
If you're speaking to somebody who's never heard of the scholarship, what would you say to them to explain why it's a unique and special program?
The uniqueness of it comes from the multidisciplinary. There are scholars that specialise in electronics, there's scholars that specialise in fire safety, there's scholars that are educated to be solicitors, but they work in a commercial world, but they're still engineering trained to start off with. So it's very multidisciplinary, and it enables you to take that foundations of those practical skills and then apply the theory to it as well. And it's that dual combination of education that makes you so unique in the engineering world.
And in some ways you travelled a similar road to Sir Joseph. You also started out as an apprentice and then went on your journey from there. Is that right? Could you tell us a bit more about that?
So I left school at 16 to start as a craft apprentice. So the level of education you get as a craft apprentice isn't enough to go to university. So after 3 years as a craft apprentice, I then moved to a technician apprentice, which then enabled me to get the qualifications to go to university. And then once I was at university, I studied for 3 years at Southampton in mechanical engineering, and then I managed to go on to the engineering doctorate, and that led me through to finally write my thesis whilst I was working out in Albuquerque.
So did Sir Joseph have the right formula? Did he picture the winning formula in terms of mixing that practical experience with the academic experience?
Correct. That's exactly what he did. He saw that the UK was falling behind the rest of Europe, and it was time to blend together the unique skills you have with hands-on experience with the academic side as well. And it's by those two being put together that you truly get the winning engineer.
It's 150 years later. You're writing another letter now to 10 Downing Street, looking at the state of engineering in Britain and of course across the world. What do you make of it at the moment? What are the biggest challenges that you see, and what action is needed to steer in the right direction?
I think the biggest challenge for us at the moment in the UK is real wealth generation, whereby at the moment we don't have enough money being made for the masses, whereas historically we might have a factory with 10, 15, 20,000 people working in it. Now all those factories have gone, it's a service-based economy, and we don't have that volume of money being made and then distributed amongst the masses. We do have some very rich people, but they're very few percent of the UK.
So what would you like to see happening to try and rectify some of these issues, and what should government be doing, what should engineers be doing, what should institutions be doing, schools? I suppose it's a holistic approach in a way. What do you think some of the most urgent issues are?
For me, it's about actually making a workforce that's good and fit for purpose. So recently the government has been increasing its academic standards at lower levels. So my daughters are going through school at the moment. The level of maths, the level of English that they're learning is far beyond where I was when I was going through school. So it's interesting to see how that's changing. But as a mass, I would like to see the whole of the UK actually going for more of a dual workforce, and primarily I would like to see the reintroduction of some form of national service, and that doesn't mean military service. So as an apprentice I worked out in Germany for 3 months, and it was very interesting working with their apprentices and how they had their national service system, which was graded by fitness. So if you smoked you might get a grade 4 or 5, which meant you did your national service but you didn't go very far from home. So one of the apprentices I worked with actually worked in an old people's home where his grandfather was. Whereas another one of the apprentices, he had a level 2 fitness, so he ended up being a tank driver in Iceland, and that was his national service. And out the back of that, you then had a dual workforce, whereby if engineering's going down, you can go and be a chef somewhere. And it was a way of them broadening their horizons of their people and taking them out of their home environments and educating them in a different way. And I would love to see something like that in the UK.
For those who are not familiar with Sir Joseph's work and who he was as a person, and you've spent a lot of time reading about him, thinking about him, channeling him in many ways. I think you even have a saying, what would
Sir Joseph do?
That's it. Can you tell people a little bit about him as the man and as the visionary that he was back in his era?
I think he was very, I'm going to use the word hard-nosed, but I think he was very focused on what he wanted to do and how he wanted to achieve it. But everything he did was supported by practical experience. And the example that always comes to mind is, how do you plot the trajectory of a bullet in 1850, 1860? So as a Victorian engineer, what have you got? You haven't got high-speed cameras, you don't have laser techniques, which we've got at the moment. So,
well, you don't even have a telephone to call somebody yet.
So how does it all fit together? So being a Victorian, he built a shooting range in his back garden, and then he put a piece of paper every 10 yards, fired the gun, and then put the piece of papers back together again to measure the hole and how the trajectory of the bullet went. And through doing that is how he came up with his rifling. And for me, you can have a huge impact on how guns work all over the world just by doing one simple test.
So what is the great lesson that echoes across the years then to engineers that are working today?
I think the lesson is you have to understand the practical to understand the theory. And a lot of education at the moment is purely based around the educational, not necessarily around very focused on the practical, not that focused on the theory and how they fit together and really unite to make the best.
So is this anniversary, this 150 years of the scholarship, a good opportunity to look back at his life and to take some lessons away from it, or just to reflect upon his life?
It is an element of reflection of what he left behind. For me, it's about how the scholars have travelled over the years and things they've been influenced by and things they've done. So we've got some amazing people inside the society that are doing the most amazing research on an academic sense, but then we've also got the leaders of industry as well. So for me, that's his legacy, are those people that are left behind.
And the people who have earned their medals are in every part of engineering and academia. They're all over the place, leading and changing and shaping engineering. Could you give us an example of what kind of people they are, what kind of work they're doing, how they are changing the industry?
The spectrum is almost unbound. We've got, I mentioned Alan earlier on, living out in Albuquerque. He worked, or used to work, for a company called Stryker, and he worked on glucose inside of the blood and the machines that supply the glucose into the blood. And the idea of that was it would then reduce any infections after an operation. On the other extreme, you've got people working out in Australia for large railway companies making rolling stock. You've got people that are focusing in academia on one of the great ones that's come up recently is the embryo and the fallopian tube, and measuring the resistance of the embryo as it goes down the fallopian tube. Could Sir Joseph thought of that back in 1868 when he originally came up with scholarship, that these people that he's going to benefact actually come up with those ideas and work in that environment? It's a massive step from where it originally started.
And just any final words of wisdom or encouragement to people who may be considering the scholarship but aren't quite sure yet? What would you say to them?
I'm going to say the same thing I say to my daughters, which they always get frustrated with. You're only limited by your own imagination. So the only thing that's stopping you is yourself. So if you want to do an apprenticeship, go and find an apprenticeship. If you want to apply for a scholarship, apply for a scholarship. I've been fortunate that I've managed to get scholarships from multiple places because I've gone out and found them, not because they've come to me. And that's what I'll leave as a lasting thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.